And that's what we're doing today in this video. Stay tuned, guys. Alright, so here's the box. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Alright, so it looks like we got our remotes inside. And then some paperwork and some stickers. Looks like this is showing us our wiring connections and what's what on the actual unit here. And then I'm sure this will show us how to program whatever we need to program once we're done. So let's dig a little deeper. Looks like here's our main module and then the charging cable for the remotes, because these remotes are actually rechargeable, so that's cool. No batteries needed. And then I'm not exactly sure what this is, but I'm sure we'll figure that out. This is the siren for the alarm. I didn't really want or need necessarily to have the alarm, but this one comes with it, and part of why I wanted it is because on this LCD key fob it'll actually notify you if someone breaks in. So that's kind of the reason why I opted to get the one with security. Here's some of our wiring. Here's another wiring loom. And then I do believe that this is a shock/vibration sensor. And then this, I believe, is for the antenna that goes up on the windshield, which, thinking about it, because this has sticky stuff on it and it has an electrical connector, I believe this is the antenna. And then we've got another small wiring loom, another larger wiring loom, and then the hood pin. I have one diagram for the system I'm installing from Viper. I have another diagram for the Immobilizer bypass that I got from Independence Audio. And then the third diagram is from 12volt.com, which actually shows all the wire colors for the wires I need to hook up to in the car. So I reviewed all of those wiring diagrams and determined on the unit which wires I actually need and which wires I don't need. And I'll kind of briefly go over that with you guys a little bit as well. Alright, so in order to install this remote start on my vehicle, I have a security system, so I'm going to need an Immobilizer bypass. Directed is actually the company that makes Viper, and this is the Immobilizer bypass that'll work for my vehicle. However, I need to have it flashed with the proper firmware for my 2003 Lincoln Town Car. So I came up here to an audio shop, sorry for the dirty window, to see if they could flash this, but they're not an authorized dealer for Directed, and that's the only way you can flash these. Unfortunately, you need a login and a password to do that, and you can't get one of those without being an authorized dealer. So unfortunately, I'm pretty much stuck with having this done somewhere else, but this place just told me another place down the street I can go, so I'm going to try them. Another thing I want to throw out there is, depending on where you buy it from, I unfortunately bought mine on Amazon, so there's no way to you know, have that done. But if you buy it from the right place, they can actually flash it for you before they ship it to you if you give them that information. So if you want to go that route, it may be a little bit easier to do that. However, from what I noticed, Amazon's probably about $10 or $15 cheaper for the DB3 that I have than some of the other places. So it's kind of a trade-off, whatever works better for you. Well, we got it done. They flashed it right here. Shouts out to Independence Audio and Video. If you're in the Kansas City area and you need a Immobilizer bypass module flashed, they can take care of you. They just hooked me up. 25 bucks wasn't too bad. However, they did say they'd prefer to really only work on stuff that they sell, so I don't know if they'll want to necessarily do that for everyone every time, but it's definitely worth a shot because they helped me out, and they even printed off the installation guide for this module for my vehicle. So I am very, very thankful. That was well worth the $25 because this module comes with 0 instructions, no wiring diagram, nothing like that. So I'm very thankful for that. You got to be kind of part of the group to get that information. You got to be an authorized dealer. They kind of keep that proprietary information to themselves, which I don't really blame them. It's a business, so I get it. But we got everything we need, I believe, to go ahead and kind of get started on this installation. So I'll see you back at the house. Alright, so here we are back at the house. We got our flash done. I've got everything kind of laid out nice and neat from the remote start system. I haven't opened this up yet and taken any of that stuff out, but we'll get to that. I don't know if I'll need the hood pin because the Immobilizer is going to communicate with the CAN bus, so it should probably know that the hood is open, but I don't know. I'll probably go ahead and install this anyway. Then the siren, then the antenna, the shock sensor, and the locks harness. We're going to start with all of that. That should get us some easy wins under our belt. So we'll have this, and this done. And then we just have these last 3 harnesses to do. This is going to be the hard / fun part. But we'll get that done, no problem as well. I've got all the paperwork I should possibly need. And so I'm confident that we'll be able to get this done. So let's go ahead and get started. So I found a couple of pre-drilled holes on this fender. I tried this one, but using a bunch of washers was the only way to get it even close to the hood, and it still wouldn't touch. And I'm not the biggest fan of having this pushed down by the hood strut, but I think it has enough clearance where it's not going to cause any extra stress on this. And there's a pre-drilled hole, so I just went ahead and put it in there and tightened it up. So once this is not touching the bolt anymore, that's when it'll kill the engine if the hood pops. So I think we're good on that. We've got our hood pin installed. Next thing I'm going to do is put the siren in this general area here into that metal with some self-tapping screws. I think that'll be better than putting it on this plastic here, just in case somebody tries to freaking reach up in there and disable it or something. This is plastic and it can be cut through. Not that anyone who's not watching this is going to know where it is, but I think down here in the actual metal of the fender is going to be a much more secure spot and potentially make it louder. And we even have a factory ground here to ground the siren to, so I think that'll be a perfect spot. Alright, so we got the air box out of here. You can see that rear air ride compressor right here and a dead dragonfly. So I got my holes drilled here for where I'm going to mount the siren. I found a couple of screws in my scrap pile there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this screwed in. Siren is fully installed and grounded here at a factory ground. So now we can put the air box back in and you won't even notice it. Air box back in, onto the antenna. Alright, so we've got the antenna mounted there and I just tucked it under the headliner. We pulled the weather stripping back here, popped off the A-pillar, and then I routed the antenna wire behind the existing wiring so it stays in place. And then I kind of brought it down here and we popped this panel off and I have it going behind these existing wires, and with the paneling back on we shouldn't be able to see it. And I've got it up here just getting ready to be attached at some point. Alright, so on this particular unit that I have, there is a light flash polarity fuse, and I believe, based on some research that I've done, I have positive polarity parking light flash. So you want to put it in the positive side and not the negative side. It's going to go in the middle regardless. But I did want to point that out, that I went ahead and did that, and then we can put this little cover back on. Another thing I went on ahead and did, one of the easy steps, I did this morning, It's actually kind of peeling off already a little bit, but I put that warning sticker on there. And then also up in the windshield, Viper. That way they know, don't mess with it. Alright, so I've done a little bit of looking around here at the wires. And on this remote start harness, we've got a bunch of different positives. So the red and black is 12 volt accessory starter input. This other red is the ignition 1 input. And then the red and white is the ignition 2. And from what I've seen on a couple other videos that I've watched, it looks like you can basically just put all these red wires together and connect them up as one wire. So I've kind of done that here. And we should be able to connect all of these to a 12 volt power source inside the car. I've got everything kind of taped up where our fuses are still accessible. And so we got one wire coming off of this connector and the other wires coming off of this one, because we have a 12 volt constant input right here as well. Alright, so let's go through and talk about some of this wiring diagram or chart here. Starting at the top left, main harness, 6-pin connector. We're going to hook the 12 volt constant up to a 12 volt wire in the car. The chassis ground is obviously going to be connected to a ground, preferably a factory ground. The siren output brown wire is going to be connected to our siren. The white and brown is a parking light isolation wire used for some vehicles that require it. In my case, we do not need that wire, so I went ahead and cut it. White's parking light output. And then that's, of course, going to connect to the parking light wire. Orange is ground when armed output. That's going to be if you want to hook up some accessories later that will coincide with it being armed. I did not use that wire for now. Then the 3-pin lock connector. I did end up using, I am going to need the blue wire unlock, and the lock was not needed. And then on the bottom here, pink and white flex relay, that was cut, not needed. Rear defogger, that connects to the rear defrost wire. Red and white for trunk release, you got to use a relay to hook that up to the trunk, but that's for releasing the trunk. The dome light's not needed because we have the factory alarm wires. Status is to turn on an immobilizer bypass, but we have a data cable on ours, so there's no need for that wire. Then you've got your aux 3, 1, and 4. Next is hood pin, that goes directly to the hood pin. Trunk pin, that goes to the trunk pin if you put one in. Activation is for a switch to remote start the car, like outside of the vehicle. Cut that wire, didn't need it. E-brake, parking brake, that just gets grounded all the time unless you have a manual. Factory alarm disarm goes to the factory alarm disarm wire. This is the door trigger wire, door input green. Horn honk was not needed because it works with the factory alarm. Ignition 1 was not needed on this application. This is for positive door triggers. Mine's negative, so violet is not needed. Here's auxiliary 2. Here's your brake shutdown wire that hooks up to the positive wire on your brake switch. Starter output was not needed in this case. Diesel was not needed. And then here's another accessory wire. So these accessory, starter, and ignition 1 are all to power certain things during those times of the starting. So like ignition 1 or accessory, like basically during remote start if you wanted to have some other accessories running. And then the green and white is the factory alarm arm. That goes to that wire in the car. And then up here is all of our remote start wires, which pretty much go to the ignition harness. There's like 3 12-volt fused wires that all kind of go together to a 12-volt. Then you've got your green and purple, which go to the starter wire. When you cut it, one wire goes to one side, other goes to the other side, and it tells you on there. And then all the pinks end up going to ignition wires, and the orange is accessory. So I got the wires kind of all cleanly set up here, all plugged in. Everything we don't need is cut, and everything else is kind of routed real clean. So it should look like this, kind of, sort of, once you've gone through your list. And then this is all of our maybe later stuff. Thing I want to throw in there, just in case you are doing this on a Panther platform, your Crown Vics, your Grand Marquis, or other town cars like mine. This is the very bottom of the dash, the kick panel. It's 3 of these little Christmas tree clips. 1 goes here, and then 2 go right under the column. This is closer to the driver door, the way we're looking at it. And then your light goes in here and twists. I unplugged it just because it gets super hot and I didn't want to get burned by it. This is the plastic panel that goes right under the steering wheel, kind of by where your knees are. And like I said, it just kind of clips in at the top, and then you got these 2 screws that hold it on, one of which on the driver door side also holds up the parking brake release lever. And then here's your metal plate that is directly behind this piece, and then it has looks like 5 bolt/screws that hold it in. Alright, so now we're going to really start getting into the meat and potatoes of this. Here are all of the colors for the remote start harness on the module we're installing, and then here's all the colors on the actual vehicle. So right now we're going to connect yellow to this gray wire that I have because I had to add some to it. We're going to connect the green starter wire to the key side of this wire and the purple to the car side. We have to cut that and connect it in that manner. And then we're going to do pink to ignition 1, pink and white to ignition 2, which is white and yellow, pink and black. And we're going to do pink and black to gray and yellow, orange to black and green. And then we should be good on the main remote start harness. So I'm going to go ahead, start doing that now. All of the wires we're looking for are right here, so you can see yellows, you can see the white and yellow. You can kind of sort of see the white and yellow is at the very bottom, the gray and yellow is directly above that. You can't really see it very good because of the light, but then we've got the black and green and all of that. So I'll show it to you real good once we get everything connected here. So there's a little piece of carpet. I don't know where I set it. Oh, it's right here. Normally covers this up, right? I took that off, and then there's a bracket behind it. I took that off, and I found this perfect cavity in there to fit the module. And then I think I'm gonna slide a piece of foam underneath it and try to zip tie it from the corner on the opposite side from what we're looking at up to something on the dash over here so it can't slide out in front of the gas pedal. And then we should be able to kind of make all our connections from here. And I think a lot of our ignition connections and stuff are just going to be right here. I have to test, of course, for all of that, but that's pretty close. All right, so I got a little foam piece underneath the brain of the remote start to just keep it from moving and taking too much of a beating and vibrations and whatnot. Then I got my fuses all set up right here and zip tied to this bracket, so they're kind of a nice little mini fuse block all on their own there. Should be easily accessible if ever needed. And then I got all my wires routed up through here, and they're kind of coming through this area here, and then they're coming down, and most of my connections are pretty much right there, so some of those may end up getting cut shorter. And then I've got the DB3 mounted right here up against this bracket, and it's zip tied in at the top. And then you probably can't see it too well, but I actually have my shock sensor mounted right behind the DB3 on the bracket with some with a command strip. And then all the wiring, the data cable and whatnot, comes out the other side, and the wiring goes down and connects on the opposite side of the, or actually it would be on the side here of the remote starter. Then I also got the ground hooked up down here. You always want to hook that up first, and then now we're safe to go ahead and start making some of our connections. Alright, so at this point we've got all of this stuff hooked up. We've got our orange to black and green. That's one of our accessories. I believe that's the one that turns on your climate control. We've got one of the pink ones going to the white and yellow. We've got another pink one. I believe it's pink and black. So pink and white goes to pink and black up here. And then pink and black goes to gray and yellow. Straight pink goes to white and yellow. Orange goes to black and green. And so I haven't cut the starter wire yet, which I believe is this red and blue. And we're going to connect the purple and green to that. And then I still have to connect up the 12 volts power. And then I also connected this key sense wire from the Immobilizer bypass right here. So that's how the bypass can sense the key, or it can tell the vehicle that there's a key in it. And that's the black and gray on the DB3 to the the pink and black wire, or I guess it's actually black and pink. And so we also got our lighting control module wire for the parking lights hooked up. All right, so we got the brown wire here coming off of our, I believe it was the 6-pin harness with the power and ground and all that. That's our siren output. So the brown's going into our module. The red one comes into the siren, and I just used a regular crimp connector and taped it up. And now I'm going to zip tie that wire up somewhere where it's out of the way. We just have basically the 12 volts constant and our starter wire to hook up, as well as a couple of data cables for the Immobilizer, and then a few other random wires for like locks and stuff like that. So we're getting closer and closer here. Sorry, I'm not showing the actual connections, me actually connecting them. I didn't want to bore you guys with that. So if you did want to see that, I'm sorry. One way that I'm stripping wire without cutting it, if you guys want to know on that, I'm taking these same way you would strip regular wire. And I'm just kind of putting it on there, grabbing it and pulling a little bit off while it's still connected. And if you're careful and you're not just jerking it apart, if you're real slow and careful with it, it'll pull it apart just a little bit. And then that's enough to get the T-tap installed properly. All right, so it took me a second try, but I was able to do it. I put the tape on the wire, and then I brought the whole thing up and tried to get it on the screwdriver, because I know it's going to be a tight space up in there, and some of you guys are going to wonder how the hell I got that taped on there. I just put the tape on the wire going perpendicular to the wire, and I reached up on there and just tried to squeeze the tape around the screwdriver. So now we got to put the provided spade terminal on the end of this wire and then just hook it up right here to the hood pin. Alright, so the hood pin pretty much has to be connected up here. So we had to bring that wire out. But the siren, I would kind of prefer for that to be connected inside the vehicle. And so we are going to route this red wire through there the same way. And then I've got both of these wires going through the grommet. And then I don't know if we're going to wire up a tack or not. We may not need to, but if I need to do that, I'll just come through this same spot here. Alright, so I've pushed the wire through with the screwdriver. Now let's see if we can see it on the other side. Yep, there it is. Kind of difficult to see, but this red wire is what we needed. So I need to get this off of that tape somehow and pull it out. There we go. Now our siren wire is pulled inside. Alright, so now we got that grommet reinstalled, either permanently or temporarily, I'm not really sure, but so far it looks relatively professional. I've got it routed somewhat cleanly, so that's where we're at for now. Okay, so I've got the dash popped off here, and it pretty much just holds on with a bunch of those push clips, so it pretty much just pops all off. Then you got 4 connectors to disconnect over here, and 1 right here. And there are 2 7mm screws up in the gauge cluster you have to take off before you start yanking. So now I'm going to pull the clock and the radio out, and I'm going to try to find and get to the rear defrost wire so we can hook that feature up as well. Alright, so I got the radio off, and there's like 4 connectors plus the antenna for the AM radio. The radio slides across this bracket on the bottom, so it won't come off this bracket till it's slid all the way out. Then there's 2 connectors on the HVAC panel. 2 of the screws here you cannot access for the radio until you pull the clock out first. It's 2 screws and 2 push clips here. But we got this out. We found our wire, which is the gray and light blue right here. So we're going to connect our defrost wire right here to that. Alright, so we got this back in there, and it's on. I promise it is. You can't really see it. It's on 75. There you go. So anyway, I found something weird, but I got it working. So if you can see back there, 0 volts, right? I'm going to press the defrost button. And now we have, you know, close to battery voltage back there. And as you can see, I pushed the defrost button. Then if I push it and turn it off, then it goes back to 0 volts back there. Alright, so now I'm going to turn my key off. That was normal key in, ignition, engine started, okay? So now we're going to remote start. Oops, wrong button, sorry. Okay, so now it's going to start any moment. Alright, so now it's remote starting, and we have still 0 back there. And so I'll go on here and we'll hit function 4 and then remote start again, and it says defog on, and we have voltage back there, so it works. But what's weird is the indicator light doesn't come on the rear defrost. So for a minute I didn't think it was working, but it totally is. Another thing I noticed, which kind of sucks but it's not a big deal, is if I go back to function 4 and hit the defrost again, it just says defog on. So you have to shut the remote start off to get it to go off, but that's not a big deal. Alright, so we got the HVAC panel back in, we got the radio back in, and the clock back in with all the connectors unplugged. Unfortunately, when I was taking it apart, I dropped a screw way down in here into the abyss, and it did not fall out the bottom. So I had to find a non-matching screw for one of these slots. Kind of hurts my feelings, but it is what it is. So now I just gotta smack this dash panel back on. Another thing I want to point out, this sensor right here is a thermistor. It's your interior air temperature sensor, so your climate control automatic can work properly. And there tends to be a lot of dust on these. There sure was on mine. So definitely try to clean that off a little bit. Don't use anything abrasive. Honestly, you can just stick your finger in there and kind of wipe off any dust real carefully. Maybe stick a little rag or something in there, or you can blow in it. But trying to keep that free of dust will keep your climate control system more accurate and functional. Alright, so we had to add another relay here in the door panel. I've got pins 80 and 36 hooked up to a 12 volt constant, which I actually used the 12 volt wire here for the trunk, this green and purple one. So both of those for the relay are kind of spliced into that, so they have 12 volts. And then the 85 is going to be the actual trunk wire, which it's red and white, but I had to extend it, so this is what color it is now. And then whenever the ground signal is sent from the remote starter, it completes the circuit for the coil. There's already power on 87, or excuse me, on 30. So whenever the negative signal is sent out and the coil's energized, it will send power across to 87. And 87 is our white and purple wire, which is the opposite trunk wire. So even though this is all plugged in, or not plugged in and everything, I will show you. We've got the trunk here, and I will hold the auxiliary button down, and then it closes the trunk. And then if we hit the button again, it will open the trunk, and it says trunk. So we got that part working. Alright, so now we've got our door trigger wire hooked up. It's this green wire going in here, but we have to connect it to the blue and to the orange and black with diode isolation. So I've already got it connected, but I'll explain to you what I did. Here's the diode I used. They're the 4001s or whatever. I have negative door lock triggers, so you want to put the striped side of the door, or the striped side of the diode, towards the door trigger wire on the car, and then the other end of the diode on the door trigger wire from the remote start. So I stripped a little bit off the orange and black, and I stripped a little bit off of the blue, and then I wrapped this around as good as I could. I probably should have soldered it, to be honest, but I didn't. And then I crimped it really good, and then I taped around it, and then I did the same thing. So basically this non-striped end is going to connect to your door trigger wire from the remote start on both diodes. So I stripped a little bit of insulation off in the middle here, and then I stripped some off on the end. The middle went to one diode, and then the end went to the other diode. And then I will try to put a photo up right after this clip of what I used to look at to kind of set it up, so it'll maybe make a little more sense to you in a picture than just my explanation. Alright, so one other cool thing I noticed, I got the factory alarm disarm wire hooked up, and now whenever I unlock the doors it will disarm the factory alarm, but when the factory alarm is disarmed, the dome lights come on, which means that I do not have to hook up the dome light wire. Very nice. And then before, it would only turn the dome lights on when I unlock it, but it wouldn't turn the dome lights off when I lock it until they timed out. Normally when you hit lock on the factory key fob, the lights in the interior will begin to dim right away. So we got the factory disarm hooked up with the dome lights working, just like I said. Now the factory arm, and now the lights go back out just like they should. So not only do we control the factory security with this now, but we don't even have to worry about hooking up the dome lights because it's already built in. That's pretty awesome. Alright, so I'm a little bit ashamed of this part here that I'm about to share with you, but I think that it's definitely worthwhile information for you to hear, and this is something definitely anyone doing this job could benefit greatly from or learn from. So as you saw in a previous clip, I did have the locks working with a 451M relay that was mounted roughly in this location. However, from the factory, this car has a priority driver door unlock. So it unlocks the driver door on the first press, unlocks the passenger doors on the second press. But when I had it working with the 451M relay, it would not have the priority door unlock. Then I came down in here and I hooked up the wires at the lighting control module for the arm and disarm wires, and then it would control the second unlock, the arm and disarm, the dome light, but it would not, for whatever reason, control this lock with only having the factory alarm set up, the wires for that. So, excuse me, I tried countless different setups with relays and this and that, trying to get it to work. So mistake number one, when I was hooking these relays up, not the trunk one, but the ones here I was trying for the locks, I was not using a fuse on the 12 volts. That's a huge mistake. I didn't intend to forget the fuse. I just had so much wiring stuff going on, and to be completely honest with you, I kind of forgot to include that. So I have This one's the one tapped in for the remote starter to get power, and then all three of these 12s have, or all three of these yellows have 12 volts constantly. So I've tapped in here, and then it becomes green because I had to extend it. But I do have a fuse up in here. You can't really see it very good, but it's in there and it's taped up. 10 amps there. And then, so how these locks work is both wires here for the actuator. This is it here. This red one is specifically unlock for the driver door, and the pink one is lock for all doors. And then there's another wire in here. I can't remember which one it is, but that's unlock for the rest of the doors besides the driver door. So both of these wires rest at ground. Whenever they need a positive signal to unlock. So I was just tapping into the wires trying to make that happen. So without a fuse and me only tapping into the wire, I'm only sending a voltage down one wire or the other, whether it's red or pink, trying to lock, unlock. I tried it all. But you have to remove the wire from ground while applying power to it. Otherwise, it not only will not work, but it will also cause damage to other components. So, because I wasn't using a fuse, I actually burned up my driver door control module, unfortunately. I'm very ashamed to admit that. And I ended up getting another one, and some parts of it worked and some parts of it didn't. And I'm going to show some photos of what I did. I actually fixed my driver door module, and if I do say so myself, I did kind of a crappy job, but it is working and it's working great, and I hope it doesn't fail again. And like I said, I'll show you those photos. So basically what I ended up doing is using a 5-pin relay. We've got 86 and 30 kind of hidden under here. So I have the signal for unlock only going to one of the coil pins. We'll call it 86 since that's covered up. Then 85 has 12 volts from our green wire. I have this pink wire looped in, so it's connected to green and then it loops over. And then we've got 30 is 12 volts as well. So both of these on the bottom, 30 and 86, are going to be 12 volts. Sorry you can't see those two because of the tape. And then this 85 is our signal for the ground signal from the remote starter. And then that completes this coil, pretty much the same thing here, except imagine if this end that has nothing on it said 87A, and that's pretty much what we have here. So it's going to constantly rest on 87A, which is, so I basically took the lock wire for this door specifically, the red and orange, and I cut it, and the module side goes to 87A because that's where it gets its ground from. So it's going to rest at ground like normal, but then when you hit unlock and this relay applies, it will jump off of ground to a voltage, accomplishing both of the tasks that we need. And then I had to extend the red and orange on the actuator side to reach up here, and that is what is going to go to pin 87, I believe. So that finally freaking works after frying the driver door module. And then before I figured all of that out too, I kept on blowing my fuse up here, but that's better than this module. So anyway, we got the Viper remote here, and I hit lock and it just locked. And I need to mess with the pulses on it so that I don't have to press it so many times, but it is working. And then it really doesn't like that the door is closed or open, I guess. So that was the first door unlocked. We got that to work. And then we've got on the second unlock, even though it takes way more presses than it should. It gets the rest of them to unlock, but I just have to adjust the settings for the pulse length or the number of pulses. I had it working a little better before, but then I tried to mess with some settings, and so I may have to revert those back. But the point is, we finally got this lock to work properly with the priority door unlock after blowing several fuses and a driver door module. Another thing I want to mention, I don't know if I've mentioned this before or not, but the remote starter, I hooked it up, my alternator was going bad, so it kept dying after it remote started, and then it wasn't seeing the voltage. So I replaced my alternator. That's all good now. But in the meantime, I tried to hook up the RPM wire so that it would read off of that instead. I hooked it up to an ignition coil, just like it says to do, or a fuel injector. A lot of the coils and injectors are going to have one wire that's the same color on each one, and then a different wire on each one. And those wires are also going to be different from each other. So you'll have like red, green, red, yellow, red, pink, red, black. So the one that's different on each one is generally the one you want to hook up to. But when I did that and I tried to remote start it, it was grinding my starter while the engine was running. I had to disconnect a whole bunch of stuff. I don't even know what happened there, to be completely honest with you. But the point of the matter is, I fried my first Viper remote starter by hooking up that RPM wire. So I still, to this point, don't understand how or why that happened. But another thing I'm ashamed to admit is I did have to buy this remote start system twice because I screwed the first one up. But I just want you guys to have all the proper information so you don't make some of these same mistakes yourself. I am by no means a professional remote start system installer. I just tried to do this when I was 16. Failed miserably. I wanted one on my car now, and I know a whole lot more about cars now than I knew when I was 16, but I will bow down to these professional installers because this is a whole nother ball game of working on cars, guys. I'm not gonna lie. So, you know, if you're not super confident in your abilities, I would maybe take this one to a professional. However, with me giving you all the information I've given you in this video, if you're doing it on this car specifically, I think you should be able to manage. Just make sure you watch this video all the way through and you get a real good game plan planned out for how you're going to set it up. You can pretty much copy what I did if you need. But for the most part, I wanted you guys to know that I did fry a Viper module and I did fry a driver door module, and those were some huge mistakes on my part, so please don't make those mistakes yourself. So we're back up here at Independence Audio again. There is a 1-key method and a 2-key method for programming the bypass module. The 2-key method, you turn the first key to the on position, wait 5 seconds, turn it off, remove it. Put the second key in, turn it to the on position, wait 5 seconds, remove it. Then within 5 seconds, you turn the second key back to the on position, and the LED on the bypass module should turn green, indicating that it's programmed. There's a 1 key where you turn it on and off twice, and then the light starts flashing slowly in orange. And no matter what I did with the 2-key method, it would flash slowly orange, meaning that it's ready for the second step of the 1-key method. The 2-key method, you only need the keys, you only need to do what I just said, and it should be good to go. I guess I have a cloned key, that's my assumption, and the guys here think that might be the case as well. So it's thinking that I'm plugging in the same key both times. So anyway, I came back up here. The second step of the 1-key method, after it starts flashing orange, you have to unplug it from the vehicle, plug it back to the computer, just like they did the first time for the firmware, except this time they have to basically submit a key to go request, and it takes like 2 seconds. They were done in an instant again. So once again, shouts out to Independence Audio and Video for real. Like, these guys hooked it up big time, so I appreciate that. They actually didn't even charge me anything for today, so very happy to give them a shout out on this video. So anyway, I came back out after they said it should be good to go. I plugged it back in the order that it said to plug it into: 14 pin, 12 pin, 10 pin, and then the 4-pin data cable. That bad boy turned green right away, so we're good to go on the bypass module. The bypass module is totally done. Alright, so we got our unit in there, nice and secure. We got the bracket back on. We got all our wires routed up through here. I've got all my bypass connections done. I've got the hood pin and the brake shutdown wire hooked up. The siren wires hooked up. We got all of our connections here at the ignition harness. And then we got our door locks done over here in the door. So there's still a few wires here I need to hook up for extra features, but I'm going to get to that at some point. I just haven't done it yet, but I think we're good on the actual remote start part of things. So we got the door panel all back on and the dash back on, like we never took anything apart. And if I didn't mention already, I don't think I showed you guys how to take this door panel off. There's a screw behind this clip, a screw behind this clip, there's a screw here, and then there's 3 hidden ones that you have to poke through the carpet to get at with your screwdriver right there. Not too difficult. And then of course you just pop it off. There's a few of the push pin clips all the way around. Another thing, once you get all finished up, you'll want to go through this list here of different settings like siren duration, door lock pulses, door lock pulse output, panic mode, arming mode, door trigger chirp, trunk switch type. You know, there's a number of different things that you need to go in here and set for your vehicle, because some things may or may not work properly without the correct setting. And then also some of this stuff is just personal preference, but once you get all finished up with the installation, you definitely want to go through this list and follow the instructions for programming system features. Like one thing that you'll definitely have to change immediately is menu 3 remote start. It always starts in manual transmission mode, so bare minimum you will at least have to change one setting to change it to automatic. Otherwise the remote start will not work. I'm obviously not going to go through each and every one of these because you can probably read the list for yourself, but this is definitely an important step once everything is connected up into the car and you've got your installation part completed. Alright, so now this is all pretty much finished up. There is one thing that's not hooked up. It's the trunk trigger wire, because when I hook it up to the trunk ajar wire in the car at the lighting control module, it'll randomly set the alarm off saying the trunk is open every hour or 2. So I'm going to end up having to run a wire for a trunk pin just like the hood to get that to work. But I'm going to be doing a radio, and it's going to have a rear backup camera at some point, so I'm going to probably route the wires for that and do that at the same time. So I'm probably not going to make that part of this video, but that's the only thing that's not hooked up or working at this point is the trunk trigger. Basically when someone opens the door or the trunk or the hood, it'll set the alarm off. So as of right now, if they open the trunk while the alarm is on, unfortunately it won't go off. However, the factory alarm is still hooked up to the trunk, so it will go off. It just won't set off the siren. It'll set off the horn only. Alright, so now that it's working, let's go over some of the features. We got unlock, which will also turn the dome lights on. And then we got our second unlock there. And then we got lock. And then we've got remote start. I don't know if that light on my phone is helping or hurting. And I've got mine set to the 12-minute run time. Then, if we go to function 4, and we hit the remote start button again, it turns on my rear defrost. So we've got that all hooked up. We can turn the remote start off. Then the system is still armed. If I were to open a door, it sets the alarm off. And it will do that for all 3 doors. I've got the separate trigger wires hooked up. It'll also do that for the hood. So we've got that all set up. And then, although it's horribly inaccurate, if you hit function once and then hold the function button down, you can check the temperature inside the vehicle. So, anyway, we've got everything working. Oh, also, I didn't show you the trunk button. If you push and hold auxiliary, it will pop the trunk. So that's working. And then, of course, if we push and hold auxiliary again, it will close the trunk. But if your vehicle does not have a factory trunk motor, then that part of course will not work. But that's pretty much all the features of the remote start system that I have installed. And that's going to be the end of the video for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope this video helps you if you're trying to do a remote start on your Lincoln Town Car, Mercury Grand Marquis, or Ford Crown Victoria, or just any remote start on any vehicle for that matter. Hopefully this video helps you out with your installation. If you liked the video, please leave a like below. That helps me out a lot. Also, if you have any questions on your remote start system, I am not an expert, but I will do my best to help you out if you just leave a comment below. Otherwise, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We only have a month and a half or so left before the end of the year, and I'm trying to hit 3,000 before the end of the year. So help me out, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I will see you next time.